Hello, my name is Greg Matleski, and I am a bicycle program specialist with the District Department of Transportation and the project manager for the Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast Corridor Study. This is a virtual presentation on the district's plans for the Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast Corridor from 2nd Street Southeast near the U.S. Capitol Building to Barney Circle on the western bank of the Anacostia River. We will begin with a background of the project, followed by a look at the conditions along the corridor today, and finishing with a look at the alternatives that we are evaluating for the Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast Corridor. The purpose of this presentation is to introduce the project to the community, share our initial findings on the existing conditions, and gather public feedback and input on the project and our proposed candidate alternatives. Some questions we're hoping to hear from you on include: what are your thoughts on the Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast Corridor overall? What are your ideas and concerns about the project? What are your thoughts on the 3 candidate alternatives? And do you think we're missing anything? These are questions I hope you keep in mind during the course of this presentation. Let's begin with the background of the project and what we are trying to accomplish within the corridor. One of the proposals for the corridor is the installation of a separated bike lane. You may be wondering what this means. A separated bike lane, also commonly known as a protected bike lane, is a lane physically separated from traffic for riding on a bicycle or other individual mobility device, whereas a traditional bike lane is only separated from traffic by paint. These separated bike lanes can be one-way or two-way, and there are many examples of these around the District of Columbia. This lane, pictured here on 15th Street Northwest near the U.S. Treasury Building, was the first separated bike lane in the District of Columbia and was installed in 2009. Many people report feeling more comfortable riding bicycles in separated and protected facilities over painted ones. This is important because many studies cite the need to feel safe as the main factor when deciding whether to ride a bike. In 2014, DDOT published the Move DC plan, guiding transportation priorities and investments for the next 25 years. Bike lanes on Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast were identified in the bike element of the plan in response to a lack of east-west facilities in the general area of the district. Move DC also called for Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast to be a high-capacity transit corridor and has been identified by WMATA, or the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, as a key component of its priority corridor network. Dedicated bus facilities are also one of the proposed treatments for the corridor. Now let's turn to an overview of the Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast project. In its current configuration, Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast serves as a main thoroughfare for motorized traffic, providing critical connectivity for drivers connecting to and from I-295, Maryland Route 4, and the Capitol Beltway, while it's also a key bus, bike, and pedestrian connection to downtown and communities east of the Anacostia River and south of Pennsylvania Avenue. The Move DC plan recommended installing a dedicated bicycle facility on the corridor. Additionally, Move DC designated Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast as a high-capacity transit corridor and high-priority freight improvement corridor. Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast is also a commercial hub for the Capitol Hill neighborhood and is lined with a mix of different restaurants, retail, and other entertainment venues. Once the final design is approved, separated bike lanes on the corridor will be constructed in 2 phases based on close coordination with the Pennsylvania Avenue and Potomac Avenue Southeast intersection project. Phase 1 of the installation will occur between 2nd and 13th Streets Southeast, with Phase 2 between 13th Street and Barney Circle Southeast. Phase 2 will follow completion of the Pennsylvania Avenue and Potomac Avenue Southeast intersection project. This study is not the only project happening along the corridor. Along with the Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast study, DDOT is also coordinating projects to upgrade streetlights and traffic signals, redesign and then reconstruct the intersection of Pennsylvania and Potomac Avenues Southeast, and finalize the Southeast Boulevard and Barney Circle environmental assessment at the eastern end of the corridor. Additionally, DGS, or the District Department of General Services, is working on improvements to the Eastern Market Metro Park near the Eastern Market Metro at Pennsylvania Avenue and 8th Street Southeast. The DDOT teams for each of these projects meet on a regular basis to coordinate efforts and ensure compatibility between projects. The overarching goal of the Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast Corridor Study is to redesign the corridor to provide for safer, more accessible multimodal transportation options. As such, DDOT's objectives with the project are to improve mobility, transportation safety, and options for all users along the corridor, provide comfortable and intuitive separated bicycle lanes, evaluate opportunities to prioritize buses and transit on the corridor, equitably reorganize the roadway and curbside uses for all modes with a cohesive approach to curbside management, and ensure the project is compatible with planned improvements at Potomac Avenue Southeast. Our current project schedule is shown here. DDOT and its consulting team, VHB, began the project in the fall of 2019, first collecting data on existing conditions before developing conceptual alternatives and analyzing their impacts. Our first public meeting for the project was held virtually on July 8, 2020 at ANC 6B's Transportation Committee. We will incorporate community feedback received on the public meeting and on this presentation into the selection of the preferred alternative by the end of summer 2020. The 30% design, or preliminary design, will then begin. DDOT will host a second public meeting in the fall to showcase the preliminary design and gather additional feedback. The Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast project will proceed in 2 phases, coordinated with the environmental assessment process for the Pennsylvania and Potomac Avenues Southeast intersection project. The first phase will run from 2nd through 13th Streets Southeast, followed by 13th Street through Barney Circle Southeast. Phase 1 planning and 30% design will continue through 2020 with the goal of completing the final design in 2021. Phase 1 will begin installation in 2022. Meanwhile, Phase 2 planning and design work will kick off in 2022, with installation of Phase 2 scheduled for 2023 and 2024, after completion of construction at Pennsylvania and Potomac Avenues Southeast. Let's take a look at the existing conditions on the corridor today. As part of the development of our 3 candidate alternatives for the corridor, DDOT and our consultants evaluated the vehicle, bicycle, and pedestrian counts along the corridor, analyzed the connectivity to the bike network in the area, looked at the number of bus routes that travel along the corridor and number of stops, their ridership, and operations, reviewed data on crashes, observed parking activity and usage at the curbside, analyzed traffic operations, and assessed roadway widths and lane configurations. It should be noted that this analysis was conducted based on data from 2019 and reflects conditions from before the impact of coronavirus or COVID-19 on the transportation network. The cross-section diagram and photo here show the configuration of Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast as it stands today. The corridor currently features 3 full-time general-purpose lanes and 1 full-time parking lane in each direction. One measure we examined was bicycle level of stress, or LTS. This metric evaluates the impact of traffic on a bicyclist's experience and classifies streets into one of 4 stress levels for bicycling. Factors in the analysis include the presence or absence of parking and bicycle lanes, street width, number of lanes, and the prevailing speed. As can be seen on the map below, Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast is rated as an LTS 4, or uncomfortable for most cyclists. Anyone who has ridden the corridor on a bicycle can attest that it is not for the faint of heart, and it is certainly not classified as an all ages and abilities corridor. Low-stress bike facilities are absent along the corridor, and DDOT's proposed separated bicycle lanes will be a positive change for many people. Taking a look at crash data along the corridor from 2016 through 2018, we found that most frequently reported crashes were side swipes. This could be an indication that drivers are changing lanes frequently to avoid unexpected roadway conditions, such as commercial vehicles stopped to load and unload, or drivers queuing to turn. Vehicles frequently changing lanes are also a major safety concern for cyclists sharing the roadway. Sideswipe crashes accounted for 40% of all reported crashes on the corridor, followed by rear-end crashes with 20% of reported crashes. Crashes involving pedestrians or bicyclists accounted for 8% of crashes. The other category of crashes which accounted for 22% of crashes, covers a variety of crash types, including crashes with parked vehicles or other fixed objects along the roadway. The map below highlights some of the higher incidence locations along the corridor between 2016 and 2018. There were 396 total reported crashes along the corridor during the 3-year period. The highest number of crashes, including pedestrian and bicycle crashes, occurred near the Eastern Market Metro at Pennsylvania Avenue and 8th Street Southeast, 2nd Street and Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast at the western end of the corridor, and the 600 and 1200 blocks of Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast. Other relatively high incidence areas include the 200 block of Pennsylvania Avenue, the intersection of Pennsylvania and Potomac Avenues, and Barney Circle Southeast. Now that we have an overview of the corridor today, let's proceed with our proposed candidate alternative designs to make the corridor safer for all users. To develop our 3 candidate alternatives, our consulting team devised 9 different potential configurations for the corridor. These designs were then evaluated based on several different operational and design and project feasibility criteria, including the degree of separation between those on bicycles and motor vehicles, intersection bike safety and operations, impacts on parking, access to transit stops and operations, traffic operations, cost effectiveness, implementation efficiency, meaning how likely is the project to be approved, funded, and constructed, and schedule to completion. The alternatives initially considered were separated bike lanes, median adjacent separated bike lanes, 2-way cycle tracks, and a median trail. After a thorough analysis of the choices, DDOT identified 3 viable design alternatives, known as alternatives A, B, and C. Alternative A can be described as separated bike lanes with peak restricted parking. As can be seen in the typical roadway cross-section diagram, this alternative includes a 5-foot bicycle lane along the curb on both sides of the street, separated from traffic with a 3-foot wide buffer. Alternative A features 3 peak direction travel lanes on one side of the street in the peak period, running westbound or inbound during the morning rush and eastbound or outbound in the evening rush. To allow for parking and loading most of the day, only 2 general-purpose travel lanes will be provided at all other times, and metered parking will be allowed in the lane adjacent to the bike lane on both sides of the street. We have a similar design to this already in the District of Columbia along M Street Northwest, which features a separated bicycle lane along the curb with a peak restricted parking lane. In Alternative A, the lane immediately adjacent to the separated bike lane would be designated as a peak period, peak direction bus lane. In this configuration, bus riders would have to cross the bike lane to get on and off the bus. At bus stops, the bike lane would be raised to sidewalk level to ensure easy access to the bus stops for people with disabilities. The dedicated bus lanes would decrease bus travel times in this heavily used transit corridor. Additionally, this alternative has the least impact on traffic flow. Alternative B would be a separated bicycle lane with full-time parking. This would be similar to Alternative A in that the bicycle lane would travel along the curb but would be 1 foot wider at 6 feet wide and would have a full-time parking lane separating the bike lane and barrier from traffic, with 2 general-purpose travel lanes at all times. A similar example to this can be seen in Silver Spring, Maryland, just over the border from D.C., where Spring Street features separated bicycle lanes with full-time parking lanes. Bus riders would use what is called a floating bus island to wait for and board the bus, and would cross the bike lane to reach the curb. This alternative does not provide an option for a dedicated bus lane, and because buses would stop in one of the 2 mixed traffic travel lanes, bus travel times may worsen rather than improve. Of the 3 alternatives, this would have the largest increase in traffic delay. Finally, Alternative C would have median-adjacent separated bicycle lanes. Rather than running along the curb, people on bicycles or other personal transport would ride in a dedicated facility adjacent to the landscape median dividing Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast in the center, similar to this example on Allen Street in New York City. As with Alternative A, this alternative would feature a peak period, peak direction bus lane running alongside the curb. This alternative has the advantage of fully separating bike and bus movements. Buses would have their own dedicated peak period travel lanes, which would improve service. Traffic signals at several intersections would be programmed to eliminate conflicts between cyclists and high-volume left turns across the median bike lane. Travel times in the general purpose lanes would increase relative to alternative A, as left-turning vehicles must wait for safe gaps or signal phases to cross the median bike lane. Through traffic on Pennsylvania Avenue will generally be confined to the middle lane to avoid waiting behind left-turning vehicles. Because of the new left turn and through bike interactions, the left mixed traffic lane would primarily serve left-turning cars, further reducing the effective capacity in the through traffic lanes. This presentation is an overview of the project process through the 30% design stage. We encourage you to look at the additional information boards. Additional materials for this presentation, including boards with additional details on the corridor's existing conditions, candidate design alternatives, and multimodal network and operations, can be found on the official project website at www.pennavse.com. Please take a look at these materials for further information on the project and its proposed impacts along the corridor. Finally, a note on the impact of COVID-19 on this project. It goes without saying that the COVID-19 pandemic has had a dramatic impact on our region, especially in regards to transportation and mobility, with an estimated drop of 76% of vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, in DC, along with a 30 to 60% decline in total daily trips. This pandemic has affirmed the viability of telework and will likely have long and lasting impacts on commuting patterns on the corridor and the region. Even after the pandemic subsides, we likely won't see traffic return to pre-COVID-19 levels for quite some time. Additionally, as people attempt to social distance to avoid transmission of the virus, it is more important than ever to provide fast and efficient transit service to reduce crowding on buses, as well as providing safe and dedicated bicycle facilities to provide options for people other than single-occupancy vehicles. Active transportation, including bicycling, is highly compatible with social distancing, and bicycle demand is at record levels from a broad population. The Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast Corridor project was already demonstrating mobility and public health benefits before the pandemic hit our region, and now represents an unmistakable opportunity for a win-win to help speed up commutes and provide a safer, more attractive corridor for residents and commuters. That concludes our presentation on the Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast Corridor study. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or other general feedback, please reach out to me, Greg Matleski, Project Manager, or Mike Goodnow, Bicycle Program Specialist, at the email address and phone numbers below. Also, check out the project website at pennavse.com for additional materials and updates on the project. Thank you for your interest in a safer, healthier Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast, and we look forward to hearing from you.